It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
And I want to cover the three biggest estate planning mistakes that we see.
Yep, I love it.
So, number one, do you even have a plan in place?
Yeah, I can't tell you how often someone comes to us, and if you are ever thinking about working with Abound Wealth or working with one of our team members, one of the first questions we always ask, and generally these are folks who have accumulated some level of wealth, is, hey, do you have current estate documents in place? And I'm always amazed when I hear folks say the same song, oh, no, never got around to it. Oh, we started the process, but we never worked through it. It's amazing how many people just don't even have a plan in place.
And it's one of those things, we are always so worried because the will, especially if you do have children, is going to be that thing, that instrument that's going to help make sure that if you can't speak for yourself, that at least the kids will be covered. Now, this is not the first time we've covered this topic. Right. And full-time equivalent Daniel actually created an awesome slide that we were like, wait a minute, let's go pull it from the archives and bring this thing forward. So let's kind of share, because surely everybody, when it's so important, everybody's got to be creating estate documents, right?
You would certainly think so, but when we actually, this is data from 2019 from Caring.com. We looked at how many Americans don't have wills in place, and what we found was that 82% of what they call the younger generation, ages 18 to 34, don't have wills in place.
That's like millennials.
It's like millennials. And here, I think most folks generally, that's the age range when you start having young children. So I would argue that's probably the age range where a will and having your documents in place is probably one of the most important times. 63% of folks in the working years, that's age 35 to 54. So that's millennials to
that's
Xers.
Gen Xers.
Gen
That's
Xers.
me. I'm in that. That's Generation X.
About 40.
The awesome Generation X.
About 47% of those nearing retirement, so ages 55 to 64, don't have any wills. And then amazingly, 34% of folks 65 and above, the retirement age folks, don't have wills in place.
Hey, one thing before I want you to notice, because this will probably help reach my goal. I can't stand the facial hair you're rocking right now, but I do notice that full-time equivalent Daniel set up that the baby boomer, the 55 to 64-year-old, he's got a Fu Manchu just like you. So that's why I think he's trying to tell you a little subliminal thing there.
Well, I'm wise beyond my years. I will agree with you. So it's amazing. This really important document, a lot of folks don't even have in place.
So it is one of those things because wills is just one component of it. We also have financial directives. We have, we have healthcare directives. We have financial power of attorneys. We have living wills. And then, of course, the guardianship provisions are built into the will themselves. All these things are super, super important just to make sure if you can never speak, if you're not able to speak for yourself, are your wishes honored? You've got to make sure you're being proactive, planning ahead for these type of things.
If you want to make sure that this is a goal that you attain in the next year, one of the things you have to fight is it's so easy for this to get put on the back burner. We see this all the time because none of us are planning on getting hit by a bus tomorrow. None of us are planning on having some tragic event happen. But it's that reason, because that's unknown, is why you have to have all these documents in place.
So first mistake is you just don't do it. You're missing it.
Yep. So
you got to cover that. But here's the second mistake we see is that you're giving yourself, I see it right now, you're patting yourself on the back saying, I've got estate documents. Right. The problem is that a lot has changed. We got tax legislation has changed. Maybe you've had more children. Maybe there's been a marriage. Maybe there's been a divorce. Maybe there's been, unfortunately, some deaths in the family. Right. All of these things, you have to ask yourself, when was the last time I actually updated my estate documents?
Yeah, the beautiful thing is estate documents aren't something that have to be updated annually or reviewed super, super regularly, but they're not something you can just do one time and forget about, because exactly what you said, things change, whether that be things in the law, in the tax code, things in legal code, or just things in your personal life. So you want to make sure that you are updating those accordingly.
And then let's do the third thing on where we see the biggest mistakes on the estate planning side is, does your estate plan match your ultimate wishes? And I want to cover this a little bit, Bo, because we've seen this in the financial planning side. I have clients that they're prospects, then they become clients. And one of the first things we do want to do when we get to this subject is we want to review their estate documents. Yep. I have read a few, and I'm like, what in the world was this estate attorney doing? And I'm talking about LLC here, LLC there. I mean, it just complexity upon complexity upon complexity, to where we even had four-wheelers that had their own LLC. We had jet skis with their own LLC, and I was like, whoa. I mean, this is I mean, if there's anything going on here, this just seems like a nightmare. And I get, look, you truthfully do need to be worried about creditors. You need to be worried about lawsuits. So I'm not minimizing that type of stuff. And I want to go ahead and put the disclaimer: we're not attorneys, so that's some of these things all have a legal purpose.
Sure.
I get it, but make sure your estate plan actually represents what your ultimate wish is, because I knew that this complexity did not match the prospect. So then I started asking a few more questions. How did you end up with this here estate plan? And what I found out, there's a common thread, and I knew this was kind of where we were headed. It was a seminar attorney.
Oh.
So these are, and we dealt with this in Georgia.
Yep.
We've seen, and this was in a whole nother state in the United States here, is that out west. So it's one, I don't know why I made it in some obscure thing. It was, but it was an obscure state. But anyway, the thing I think is you have to be careful of, free is not always free.
exactly
Just
right.
because somebody offers you a steak dinner or they're coming into your workplace to give a seminar on something, be very careful, because if it doesn't represent you and it has complexity, you might be getting sold something that's really not going to be an effective tool for you.
And here's the breath of air that you can kind of breathe is that while estate planning can be complicated and it can be kind of a cumbersome thing to work through, it doesn't have to be to the point where you don't understand it. A really good estate plan should be something that you could very easily explain to your loved ones. Even if you are doing things like you have trust structures or whatever the case may be, you should be able to explain the what's and the whys behind your estate plan. If you can't do that, either one, you need to brush up a little bit, or two, maybe you don't have the right plan in place.
That's exactly right.